Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. This is our very first webinar of the year, and I am so thrilled that you are choosing to invest an hour to learn with us. We'll be getting started in just a few moments, but as you're coming into the Zoom room, I want to let you know about a few technical considerations for today's event. First of all, we are recording today's session. So I know you're going to find great value, and I know you're going to want to share this recording with your colleagues and friends. So be assured that we will record and we will get you a link to the recording later on. Again, I want to welcome you to find the Zoom chat. Throughout today's event, we're going to be engaging you in our topics. We want to hear from you in the chat. So if you could take a moment right now and let us know where you're calling in from today. I am calling in from a brand new webinar background for 2023 in my office in Lambertville, Michigan. I know that Heather Younger, our author today, is in Denver, Colorado, where it's very snowy, and Yetta Toliver is in North Texas. So welcome to all of you who are chatting with us. It is great to see folks from all across the country and around the world. Welcome to Colin in London, to Catherine in Durham, to Mary in Pennsylvania. Great to see Arizona, the San Francisco Bay Area, just about every single state. I see we have some call-in attendees from Canada, from Georgia. We've got somebody else in Colorado. Heather, someone named Heather has called in from Colorado. I want to quickly ask, if you are representing an organization today and you are here as part of your professional development, would you go ahead and tell us what the name of your organization is so that we can give a shout out to you? We are always thrilled when people choose to invest with their professional development. And I'm going to have to just say, we have Yetta Toliver from Xerox. We also have some folks from Xerox in the house. Thank you for joining us. Woo-hoo! We even have people from Xerox UK. We have people from Kellogg's, from Westgate Bank, I read that right, from the city of Los Angeles, from IU Health, from Ultra Camp, from Kate Waterfall Hill Leadership Coaching, from Clinic Center for Health, from Episcopal Relief and Development, Volunteers of America, Dexterity Solutions. Amazing. And thanks to those of you who have let us know your organization. And wow, I just keep seeing more people from around the world. Belgium. So thank you. We want our chat to be a rich place where you can engage both with our content and with each other. And so we invite you again throughout the event to put any questions or comments, and we will be getting to your questions later on. Now, before we get any further, I do want to take a moment to introduce my friend and client, Heather Younger. So Heather is published by Barrett Kohler Publishers, and we've had the chance in the past to collaborate, and now we have the chance to work together in this way. And Heather is preparing for the launch of her third book. It is called The Art of Active Listening, and it will be launching on April 25th. So this actually, I'll be telling you a bit later, but this is the first of 3 events. And we are thrilled to be able to cover a lot of different topics related to active listening. And we hope you'll join all 3 events. So really quickly about Heather, she is the founder and CEO of Employee Fanatics, which is an organization dedicated to inspiring and training leaders to put their employees first. She is a frequent keynote speaker, and if you follow Heather on Instagram, you're going to get to see the many amazing stages that she graces and the multiple people each year, thousands of people probably, who she is influencing with her ideas about leadership, about caring leadership, about active leadership. And I know that you're going to want to follow her if you haven't been following her already. So thank you so much for being with us today, Heather. And I'd like to turn it over to you right now because we are starting this first webinar in a series of 3. And what we'd like to do first is really to set up this idea of active listening before we dive into our more specific topics with Dr. Toliver today.
Yes. The biggest thing when we think about listening, we've heard of active listening for many, many, many years. And I always found that, number one, it felt very theoretical and not real. And so I make an attempt in the book to bring it to real life and real life scenarios and situations, no matter where you are in the workplace. But it was this idea of when people think they're listening now, do the people on the other end actually feel heard? And through my research of listening and people in lots and lots of focus groups and reading thousands of employee surveys and just being in the workplace a lot, kind of knee deep in it with employees and leaders, I noticed that they weren't feeling heard, and that the listening we thought we were doing, either leaders to team members or coworker to coworker, it wasn't real listening. And it wasn't really listening because in the end, people didn't see any result from what it is they thought people heard them say. They didn't see action. They didn't ever hear back from people. So in the book, what I've done is I've put together a 5-part framework that walks people through a process that it might look kind of theoretical to start, but if done, like actually tactically done, then in the end of it makes people at work feel heard, valued, and understood. That is the end goal of this book. And it's really the beginning and the end of all the work I do at Employee Fanatics, is helping people feel heard, valued, be heard, valued, and understood. So that's what it's about. And it's really about, like, instead of guessing what people want, it's knowing what people want. And when we know what they want, now we can go solve for that.
That is amazing. So helping people feel heard, valued, and understood. So we want to get your feedback just as we start today's event. And I have a poll for you. I'm going to launch it now. We would love to hear about which of these benefits of active listening is showing up for you today. So are you interested in the way that active listening can build trust? Are you interested in the way that active listening provides a deeper sense of importance and belonging? Are you interested in the way that active listening increases overall satisfaction and happiness at work? Or are you interested in the way that active listening helps to decipher the difference between thinking what people want and knowing what they want, as Heather was sharing? I'm going to give you a few moments to answer that poll. There are a lot of great choices. I do want to note that someone has requested that we turn on captions. We are working on that behind the scenes to support you. I'm going to give you a few more seconds to answer the poll, and then we will take a look at what is showing up for folks today. All right, to share those results, it looks like about 44% of you like this idea that active listening can help you decipher the difference between thinking what people want and knowing what they want. But, you know, lots of these other choices are represented as well. Heather, do you have any response to our poll?
This doesn't at all surprise me. I think that so many times we fill our brains with assumptions. And so this whole idea of thinking we know what people want versus actually knowing it is it hits it right on the head, right? And so that doesn't surprise me. And I think that second one about building trust, it is kind of the foundation of this, because in order for us to achieve anything at work, people have to trust one another. Customers have to trust us. We have to trust each other. We have to trust our leaders, and vice versa. So, but if we don't learn to listen well, so that we complete tasks in the way we're supposed to, or we go solve or help a coworker in the way that they really want us to, we're never going to land on the place where people feel heard, valued, and understood. So I think that first one makes total sense to me.
Perfect. Thank you. So now, before we move on and introduce our special guest, I do want to let you know about the upcoming events with Heather Younger. So on February 23rd, we will be joined by special guest Phil M. Jones, and we will be talking about the art of active listening and exactly what to say. Heather, anything you want our attendees to know about Phil Jones?
Phil Jones focuses a lot on kind of sales, relationship management, really communication, and just understanding the right words in a more tactical sense, the exact right words to say to let people, let's say at the end, whatever the end result is, if you want to get them there, it really helps you get there in a tactical step-by-step way. So I thought I wanted to bring him in because this book, while my other work in these books before that were really focused on those who are in manager roles, this book is more expansive and, in my mind, more inclusive, because I wanted it to be for everybody at work and whoever it is that they interact with in any role that they play. So it's not just those that have manager titles. And I found that because after I would be like in audiences, I would ask people to raise their hand if they thought of themselves as a leader. And even if they were all managers in the audience, only 50% of the people raised their hands. And I said to myself, if people don't think of themselves as leaders, even if they have manager titles, okay, and that's how we mostly think of leaders, I want to change the whole, mix up here and let everybody know that they have this responsibility. So this exactly what to say is a great mix of like, let's bring sales in, let's bring customer experience in, let's bring in other people that are from the front lines to the top of the organization. So.
Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute. This sounds like it's going to be a tremendously powerful event. I want you to think about one or two or three of your colleagues that you can invite to the next event with Phil Jones. Maybe jot their names down on paper before we go on. I'm also excited to tell you that on March 28th, we will have special guest Stephen M.R. Covey. I'm guessing you've heard that name before. And we'll be talking about the art of active listening to build trust and inspire greatness. Heather, anything you want to say about hosting an event with Stephen M.R. Covey?
Oh gosh, well, it's a little dreamy. He endorsed my last book, and I endorsed his last book, and we both were on a stage together. And for those of you out there who have any level of respect or know anything about the family, it was so cool because during his keynote, about a few times he mentioned my work, and I was like, wait, the Covey family is mentioning my work on caring leadership. It was very, very cool. He is such a big-hearted gentleman. I mean, so down to earth. Even though there's all of this amazing legacy behind him that you think maybe he could have an heir, he doesn't. So when you come, you're going to feel his heart. You're going to love him so much. Absolutely join us.
Yeah, I cannot wait to meet Stephen M.R. Covey. Well, thank you for all of that. And, I'm beyond thrilled today to get to know and learn from Dr. Yetta Toliver. Sorry about that. And I want to tell you a little bit about her. We were speaking before the webinar started about the amazing 36-year career that she has had at Xerox. And, that is something that's really unheard of in today's world as people jump from organization to organization. So at Xerox, Yetta is the global head of diversity, inclusion, and belonging. As I mentioned, it's 36 years. So do the math. She joined in 1987. And back in 2013, she established the Journey of Leadership Institute, which is a leadership program that empowers individuals to advance in leading self, others, and organizations. Again, she's from North Texas, Lewisville, Texas, and we are so thrilled to have you with us and to learn together today, Yetta. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Becky.
So as we dive in, we really want to tap into your role as Global Head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion to really think with us about what the biggest business challenges will be for organizations who are really looking to succeed in the important work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. What are the trends and challenges that you're seeing?
I'd like to first acknowledge Heather and all the great work that she's done and talk about an example of being inclusive as she brings in various subject matter experts and authorities in their areas. So I just thank you for this opportunity to share this stage with you and to celebrate you as well, Heather, with all the great work that you do. Now, the biggest business challenges in 2023, as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. For us at Xerox, we focus on diversity, inclusion, and belonging because equity is an action of we do inclusion and belonging, right? We will get to equity around that fairness of treating of others. But one of the things that is really, really important and top of mind now is synchronizing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging strategies with well-being. And this is what research is really showing, especially as we went through COVID and coming out of COVID, well-being has been on top of minds of lots of leaders, as well as us as individual contributors in our roles as employees. Research shows that there is a direct correlation between well-being and productivity within the workforce. So that's why it's so important that we really synchronize these efforts we have with DEIB with well-being, because especially for our employers, they're looking for us to be productive. The ability for our employees to bring their whole self to work is a game changer. That's very, very important. And it also helps to create that B that I just talked about in DEIB, that sense of belonging. The second thing, being more specific in what I see in the trends as employers are looking for getting in additional talent, is the recruiting, promoting, and retaining of more women, because the employees are now in control of their careers. During COVID, we were all facing the great resignations. You probably all saw it. It was a headliner that people were exiting the workforce. But what we have seen was a higher attrition among women. What we also are now shifting around is the great retention. You need to be able to stop the resignations by retaining. So what is the stickiness that you're going to be creating? So that's another challenge, because there is a higher attrition among women, especially when we talk about manager and senior level positions. McKinsey Women in the Workplace study. If you haven't seen it, it has been released. Xerox participated in that again this year, and it talks about the broken rung. The broken rung is still holding women back. We're in the tech industry at Xerox, and we really want our women to succeed and be successful. We're known in our history for being the first Fortune 500 company to have a woman-to-woman succession plan in place, from going from one woman CEO to another woman CEO, an African-American woman CEO, the first Black female CEO of a Fortune 500 company, Ursula Burns. And we're still struggling. Men significantly outnumber women in management position. We know that. So what we need to do is create a way to make sure that we're filling our talent pipeline with women, so we can ensure that we're promoting them from management positions to senior level positions and on to the C-suite. So to me, those are the two biggest challenges for 2023.
Wow, that's some rich stuff. And it's like one thing that your heart is so much into this work, and I'm so glad they have you in that role, focused on this good work. And it's frustrating to think about where the numbers are. Even, like I said, with an organization as strong as yours, starting with Ursula and kind of going from there, it's frustrating to think generally how hard this is. Why is it so hard to keep a diverse workforce, right? And to make sure that when they're there, they feel like they have a seat at the table. And when they have that seat at the table, they get to choose what voice they use and how it's actually being included in that process. So I just thank you. So I'm going to give you a back of kudos back to you for all the great work you're doing. I'm just so proud to be aligned with you.
Thank you for that.
And I know, Heather, you and Yetta have worked together at Xerox with the employee resource groups at Xerox on the topic of intersectionality. And so I'm curious, as we think about this overarching topic of active listening, how do you think that active listening really plays into this idea of really truly understanding intersectionality at work?
When we think of intersectionality, it's kind of like what are we all made of, and the different components of who we are as people, what we might look like at front, but what we are behind the scenes. And so and that's the simple way for me to state this, of course, not in an academic way. But as we think about intersectionality and listening, we can't know all those intersection points, what I call the connection points that bring people together, unless we sit with people and understand who they are. And that means we have to sit and listen. We have to clear away the fray. We have to put down the cell phones, put the laptops down, right? And we have to be present with the people to understand who they are on the top and underneath and what it is they need from us. And that's where I think that active listening and the framework that I put forward in this kind of new way of listening is a big solution to help us start getting there.
And if I may, I want to build on that for a moment. It's kind of going back to when Heather and I had the opportunity to work together with employee resource groups. We were working on, during that time, we were really focusing on intersectionality. And this was around October 2021. And our group of employees that are members of our employee resource groups created this video we called I Am. And what it did was it allowed the employees to say it was more to them than what you could see, right? There's so many diversity demographics, far beyond when we talk about gender, age, race, ethnicity. There are so many things about culture. And for Xerox being a global company, we have to understand the differences in other countries that we're in. We have to understand the educational differences of individuals. Even in the US, I am from South Louisiana. My culture is much different for me than when I moved to the great state of Texas. So I had to learn those differences. But what we have found when the employees did that video was so intentional to demonstrate what intersectionality looks like, because sometimes what can happen to leaders, the unconscious bias that we all have, will creep in, and it'll cause you to be a little bit challenged on truly leaning in and listening, as Heather has framed up what the conversation should be about, to ensure that employee is really being heard and valued. But you have to move past your unconscious biases and understand that. So the power of that video, really, I took it from being called I Am to there's more to me than what you see. And that allows you to start really activating your listening skills when you realize you need to get to the person and get past those other things that you will align with when you see that person from a physical perspective, or those very different diversity demographics, and then getting to that person. So I just wanted to build on that for a moment.
Can I ask a question, Yetta? This is really exciting and interesting. Can you tell me a little bit about what some of those I am videos look like? And I'm curious if some who are watching would want to try it out. So if we were all going to participate in doing this I am exercise to be able to see and listen and understand each other more, what would that like? What would it include?
Yeah, what the way the script was written, as the employees did their own sharing in the video, it was to create this awareness about the qualities we all have. If you can understand that there is more to me than what you see, because it was going from what is unnoticed to what is noticed. So it talks about one that's an engineer with a degree from Cornell. He's Hispanic. He's aligned to our Hispanic community of our employee resource group. One openly shared being transgender, and was able to share as a technician being a transgender person. There was also an opportunity to share what we call our hidden disabilities, where someone with dyslexia shared that they were. And being able to say that even someone suffering from an illness of having cancer. So these things you wouldn't have known about the person, but knowing those hidden disabilities, knowing about their education, understanding about who they really are, it was really beautiful to share. And a lot of our employees wanted to take that video and thought it was great to put in our lobby so it could be looped there so customers can understand what Xerox really looks like, because we know that there's power in diversity. It showcased that. We know that because diversity matters, and it showcased how inclusion bonds us. It definitely showcased that. And having employees be open enough to truly share who they are and feeling safe about it. Let's talk about psychological safety. There's a couple of things I share with the employees that opened up and shared, to be able to know they're in a safe place and put it there to be broadcast out across the world, shows that they feel valued, and this is a place of belonging for them. So that's to give you a highlight, Becky, of what it was about. So it was definitely my pleasure to share that with you.
Oh, that's amazing. And we do have someone in the chat, John, who is doing an I am, and thank you for that. And if there's anyone else who would choose to do that to help those who are attending this event get to know you a bit better, we would love to see those I am messages. So I'm curious, Yetta, is there a scenario that you can think of when slowing down to seek to understand someone who had a different lived experience than you led to greater organizational or team success? I bet you have a lot of stories about that.
I have a lot of stories. I do. I'm becoming an official storyteller at Xerox, along with another name that they've given me. It's Mama Bear. We'll leave that for another time when we talk about me being called Mama Bear. But in my role as diversity, inclusion, and belonging leader at Xerox, understanding the lived experience is important for advancing our diversity, inclusion, and belonging roadmap. And let's set the story straight. It is a roadmap. It's a journey. So we continue. We've been on this journey. We'll continue to be on this journey since the late 60s. And we are still progressing, sometimes slower than others, but we're still progressing and advancing as we go. I always start the conversations with employees when I'm leaning in to listen, is that I can't commit to taking an action based on our conversation, but what I want them to know, I will actively listen with the intent to make sure that I can tell them that they have been heard. And it is pretty common for me to pause and do that, especially with being a global company. I have employees that reach out to me, and English is not their first language, but they feel comfortable enough to come in and have conversations with me, because this is a judge-free zone. This is a safe zone to have those conversations. So it also gives an opportunity to lean in to inclusion. It makes that space for belonging. And what's important, and this is not just from my experience, Becky, this is from what research has shown. When you are able to demonstrate that and listen in and have those conversations with employees, it helps to improve the culture behavior. It helps you to have a healthy culture. And a healthy culture is a greater organization. And a greater organization helps you to be effective. And I'm going back to what I said earlier, to be able to be productive. So it is great to do so. The conversations I have with our employee resource groups, global leaders, you talk about some real and authentic, no filter conversations, because they're representing the voice of their community. And they're about coming together, as Xerox did in the late 60s, as they started to recognize caucus groups. And the reason why caucus groups we call employee resource groups today or came about because employees had to bring their collective voice together to push those policy changes and procedure changes. So that's why it's so important for me to do so in my role today. I want to know, as I navigate and advance this roadmap, you give me an opportunity to lend in and listen. So again, going back to what I said earlier, can't commit to making a change, but I can commit to listening and being available to listen to what their concerns are and the matters that they may have. And in some cases, especially with our employee resource groups, global leaders, they're about being change agent. And that's actually one of the verticals that sits on the roadmap, is helping to facilitate culture change. If I did not have these experiences to share and allow the employees to participate and openly share where what their concerns are and where we had opportunities and even things we need to celebrate, I couldn't advance and make a change in the culture. So that's some of the experiences I do. And we've been very successful as we continue to move forward in Xerox. We're getting recognized now for inclusion on our benefits, being just on last week, we received recognitions for now being an age-friendly organization. And this is because our employees are telling us the things we need to do and some of the things they're sharing with me in their candid conversations on where we need to make improvement, and those improvements are turning around and being shown to show us and showcase us as a company.
I love that so much. This right here is like, this is why you're here. That's why I invited you here. Amazing work. And I knew that you use listening as your foundation. And as we think about inclusion, I see inclusion, when I talk about inclusion, I see it first and foremost as how well do you use the voices of the people that drive your business forward to help drive it forward? How well do you use their voices? Do they feel included in the work to be done? And so as Yetta just, I think, beautifully laid out, all these things that are happening, we're getting rewards for this and this and that. And it's because we listened and we responded. And now look, we are reaping the benefits from it, right? So I think the key is, I think most of the time organizations are really making decisions from the top down, and people inside the culture, customers and employees alike, are feeling like victims. They're feeling like things are happening to them, not with them. And in this case, a very clear positive case study. It might not be a perfect case study. No one's perfect. But in this place, I think it's almost positive, like totally perfect, right? That Yetta's talking about, where it's like, we listened, we created this. Look, there's awards coming from it, but it's the people, the employees who are driving that bus forward, who gave us the feedback, and our responsiveness, basically us being more inclusive by saying, you come along with me, let's walk together to make our culture better. So voila. I mean, kudos to you and your team and all the ERGs and all the work that you're doing. It's just very inspirational to me.
And Heather, if I may, I want to lend myself to something there to reflect, because that was a good news story I end, but I want to share another quick story around how the active listening really paid out when we talk about listening to our employees and doing listening tours. And some of you, if I have any of practitioners that are listening in today, may align with this. And they talk about listening tours and doing storytelling. One of the things after the killing of George Floyd, we know it was just a pivotal time for us. The world was on pause because of COVID, and being able to see social injustice being done as this person lost his life right there in front of all of our eyes. And we had to take a moment, our senior leaders, our executives took a moment to lean in and listen to our employees, especially the African-American community. One of the things they did as they went through the process, they continued to listen. What did they need to do? And it was over 143 sentiments that was captured out of this qualitative, rich text. Can you imagine how overwhelmed they felt, and what Xerox to hear firsthand from their employees, what we needed to do better as a company? We really kind of had lost our way once the sentiments came out. What they did do, though, they realized how far we had lost our way when it came to diversity, inclusion, and belonging. We needed to bring in a more of a sense of a belonging. And our recently passed CEO, John Vicentin, we were focused on diversity and inclusion, but he felt the value of having belonging because he wanted to make sure we had a core value about our employees being valued, but our employees weren't feeling valued. So as they talk about how the impact of the killing of George Floyd and all those others who had lost their lives during that time and even after that time, how we had to value our employees. As some of us may have heard, how it's important to teach good manners starts at home and then go out from there. And we had to learn how to do better at Xerox before we can go out and try to heal the rest of the world. And one of the things that came out of there was the role I have today. Our employees said, you talk about being diverse and you talk about being inclusive, but you don't have anyone really leading that. So that's just an example of where we had to listen in, and our senior leaders did not get a very good response where we had a big opportunity. But guess what? They listened. And then they became intentional about making things change. And again, we still have a long way to go. And I'm so glad one of my colleagues, John Curtis, who has just about as many years at Xerox as I've had, and we both have seen an opportunity to be ignited and just regenerate the company's interest in where we're going and moving forward. So I just wanted to share that story because that was an opportunity where we were not listening. We had went through a period where our voices as employees were not being heard. But after the killing of George Floyd, our leaders needed to lean in and do something. They did, they listened, and then they became intentional. So thank you for allowing me to share that story.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So we've been talking about the good news of the benefits that can come when we practice active listening. And I'm curious to hear from you, Heather. What do you think are the biggest stumbling blocks to listening well at work? And we're going to put that question in the chat as well. If those of you who are attending today want to share your ideas as Heather is sharing her perspectives, we would love to know, what gets in the way of listening well at work.
I mean, I'd say the number one thing, and just give me like an amen in the chat if you agree that multitasking is a huge thing that gets in the way of listening at work. Huge, right? And not just at work. We all know this is at home too. In fact, I always say I do much better at work at this than I do at home because I have 4 children and they're all running around asking me 5,000 questions and I've got this going on and that going on. We have got to, everyone out there listening, we have got to put the phones down. We got to put the laptop lid down. We have to, if we need to, close our door. We have to find a way to center ourselves in the person or the people that are right there who need us to hear them. They need us to see them. And so I think the biggest stumbling block is that we just have too many things going on that we think everything is important all at one time. And it is not, because I have seen the research that there are people in the workplace that are eggshells. They are so thinly wound. Right now, they are considering committed suicide. If we are not present with them, we miss it. We miss the opportunity to make sure that we catch it. We won't catch it if we are looking at 5,000 other things. There's a crisis that's going on right now. And we, not just those with titles, just any of us peer to peer to customer, what are we missing by not being present? I think the whole epidemic we're experiencing is that we want to do 20 things at one time. We can't be great if we decide to do 20 things at once. The research shows that we usually can't handle more than 2 things at one time. And are we really effective? So while there are other stumbling blocks, I would say that if we can all leave here saying, how do I commit to being more present right now in the moment, removing all the other distractions for the people that come to me? Because when I do that, no matter who it is, which stakeholders in front of me, they're going to achieve more, be more, do more for them and for the team. If I'm able to give them that presence, I can hear them more. I can get to the bottom of what their needs are. I can give them more direction. I can be there to support them if they just need an ear, right? Those are the things we get. So I would say, well, I can give you a whole list, and there's more of a list of things in my book. Multitasking is the epidemic in my mind as it relates to the workplace.
And the funny thing is, Heather, I think someone typed that in the chat right before you said it, and you have got so many amens in the chat. So many amens. Well, we are going to go to some questions from our attendees in just a moment. But before we do that, we have one more question that we want to focus on together. And I'd like to ask both Heather and Yetta to answer this question. Because I think, Heather, as I hear your passion and enthusiasm for, being present in the moment, helping someone feel seen and valued and heard, I thought it might be useful for us to reflect on some stories of, what's a time in your life that someone really listened to you and really made you feel heard? Because I think those stories can give us a window into what's possible in our relationships. And again, if you'd like to put your stories in the chat, we would love to see them. But Heather, I don't know if you want to share first, what's a time in your life that you felt listened to and heard and valued?
Well, one of the steps in my 5-part framework for listening is recognize the unsaid, recognize what people aren't saying. And there was one manager that I had, I remember, I was becoming increasingly frustrated because I was hired to do one particular job, and my personality is very entrepreneurial. So I was just going about getting that job done. And at some point I felt a huge break be put on by some members of the executive team. I'm like, wait a second. So I was really, really, really frustrated. And I expressed that to, at that point, my manager. And he kind of let it sit. He didn't respond right away. And then I would say within a day or something, he could just kind of see my body language and kind of feel maybe my energy was off. And so he came down to my office, and I remember him knocking on the frame of the door. I remember the specific instance when he did it. And he just came in with this big smile on his face. And he sat down on the chair across from me. We had no agenda. He was not on my calendar. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? What's happening here? And he just said, so how you doing? And I'm like, I'm doing okay. And he's like, listen, I just want you to keep your chin up. I just want you to know that I hired you to do the work you're doing. You're doing great work. I know we might be frustrating you right now. I know things feel paused, but I just want you to know that you're doing great work and I see you, and just keep your chin up. Okay. And it meant a lot to me for that to happen, because again, he was someone who was the fifth floor up, the top floor of the building. And I'm down here, and he came down unannounced, but he saw me. He took the time to recognize what I did say and what I didn't say after it, how I was emotionally, my emotional state. And he went in to solve it there. So I would say that was my biggest example of someone really seeking to understand me.
Amazing story. Yetta, would you like to share one?
Yes, Heather was sharing her story. I was like, now which one? I'm feeling vulnerable here, right? There are so many of them to go through, but I will tell you, it was probably as I settled into this role, being the diversity, inclusion, and belonging leader. And some of my very close colleagues could hear it in my voice as I talked to them, especially those I'd done a prior role with, as I settled in. First 6 months, going from a position I had done for 8 years where I could do it in my sleep to this was new. And as I was getting settled, learning, had full confidence of being transitioned to the role, and the senior leadership was supporting me on the effort, but I wasn't. And it was coming across as I was sharing with everyone. They heard me because this is a time during COVID. We just have video conferencing, and they could hear the tone in my voice wasn't quite the same. The excitement, the energy level wasn't quite there. And I would go well, if this doesn't work out for me, well, I always can go follow my adjunct work, or is my old job back open? It was very interesting to hear from one of my sponsors, because it's something about the grapevine, which is true. People will go out and tell things to other people. So the grapevine in communication is true. So one of my former sponsors, who's retired from the company, caught wind of the conversation and the tone, and apparently the demeanor in which I had. And he called me and he said, it was a sit down moment. As he said, he's like, first of all, you were selected to do the job. And he said, based on you and your skills, I know you're well capable of doing the job. So that's not an issue. He said, but what I want to hear going forward is your confidence in you doing the job. Mm-hmm. And that taught me there's different ways of having active listening. He didn't have to hear me or see me react. It's based on what he heard others say. And he knew me well enough to come back and tell me, you need to stay on task, stay focused, get your confidence together, because you're capable of doing the job. So to me, that was my example. When someone heard me, but it wasn't in for as a one-on-one conversation, but hearing the things that I was saying and being able to come back and tell me what I needed to do and improve. And he is one of the great listeners that I know of today, as he again helped me and sponsored me throughout my career. So that's my example I wanted to share.
And that's a perfect example too of recognizing the unsaid, because it has so much to do with what's inside the culture and us not taking time to pause enough to even recognize what's happening around us. And so if someone else said it, okay, that person, he heard what the other people said, then he watched maybe your body language or saw how you acted, like walked around inside the culture and inside the walls, inside the whatever meetings. And so, but many don't do that, or they notice it, but they say, I don't have time to deal with it. And they place it on the back burner because in their minds, it's not important. And so him taking the time to see it from other people, it coming from them, and then to kind of see how you were now acting. So kind of sniff testing it. And then from there, responding to you saying, oh, and so that's action. That's compassionate action on his part to give you some really good logical guidance. So I'm impressed with
him. Well, thank you for that.
Well, we have so many great questions that have been coming into the chat, so we're going to shift those now. And I do want to welcome you. If you have additional questions, we'll get to as many as we can, and feel free to put those into the chat. But I'd like to start with this one from Megan, and it's because it's one I'm really interested in. So, and it's at the list. So Megan is asking, how do you encourage employees to open up when you want to listen to them more, but they are not comfortable sharing more about themselves?
I'll go first. I actually think that a lot of times people aren't comfortable unless you emulate the behavior. Mm-hmm. So I would be the one to share something. Doesn't have to be super vulnerable, but I would be the one to share something about me. And then when they see that I'm very open and receptive, they're open and receptive to share more things with me. So I always say, like, one of the things was like building trust, we did on the poll. And if you've taken that time to build that trust up front by kind of being there with them in the trenches and like just kind of being an ear for people that are there and showing them that you're going to do what you say you're going to do in the workplace, I feel like you've built that trust. You've gotten the currency in a way. So it'll be easier for them to feel comfortable there. I think too, that if they do share something with you that can be perceived as like a little bit testy or problematic, let's say, and your response is not extreme either way, but you're actually centered and you're calm and you're there and you show a listening ear without judgment. Now they know you're a safe space. You are the safe hub for them, right? So I think those are some of the ways that I would look to do it. I don't know, Dr. Yetta.
Yeah, building on what Heather said, you definitely have to create that safe space, and you also have to allow for extending the invitation to know that it is a safe space, and you role model that as well, and making sure that people understand that trust level is there, that they can confide in you, and they have the confidence to know that what you say will be kept safe. And they don't want to know, especially if you navigate through as you're trying to progress up the corporate ladder, and you don't want anything to consider you to be to hold you back. So that's why you want to make sure it's a judge-free, safe zone. But what comes to mind for me is Erin Myers authored this culture map. Understanding how people communicate is very important. Some may not want to openly share and be engaged in an open setting. They may want to do it more in a one-on-one. They may prefer a nonverbal over verbal. So as leaders, you have to understand, or be it a mentor, being a sponsor, whatever your role may be with that individual, you need to understand how they want to correspond and communicate with you, because you listen actively, just as if it's verbal, nonverbal. You want to hear what those cues are. So that'll be very important. So that's kind of the takeaway for me for that question would be first of all, extending that invitation to know that is a safe space, but also being able to understand how they want to communicate. I actually work as an adjunct professor and an advisor at a couple of the universities here, and another role I have with my sorority. And I actually had one of the young ladies I was working with during COVID who did not want to talk openly on camera. She preferred to chat. Because guess what? She could open her heart out as long as she could do the texting. But she got to the point now, in fact, I just received from her over the weekend with her Christmas gift to me as we were still celebrating the holidays. She had a note in there thanking me for helping her to come out of her comfort zone. And now she's more open and she's able to communicate and express herself because I met her where she was. That's the important thing. Meet the individual exactly where they are. And now she's able to communicate more effectively and getting ready. And just as she continues to sharpen her leadership skills. So that's my response to that one.
You're like we were like a warm cup of cocoa for me, Yetta, in front of the fireplace, big hugs to you.
So I realize that sometimes people have to drop before the end of the hour, and I forgot to do this before we started the Q&A, so I'm going to pick it up now. We do want to tell you, if you're interested in staying more in touch and engaged, as Heather brings her book, The Art of Active Listening into the World on April 25th of this year, if you scan this QR code or go to heatheryounger.com/book launch team, you can find out about joining Heather's VIP book launch team, and there will be some exclusive bonuses for you. Or we also want you to find out about how to pre-order the book, either one copy just for yourself or multiple copies for your organization. And there are some bulk pricing options available on Porchlight Books. And so we would encourage you, if you are today here representing an organization of any size, and you know that this message of helping people at work feel heard, valued, and understood is one that your team needs, I would encourage you to take an action step this week to go ahead and bulk order this book so that you can have it when it comes out. So those are just a few possibilities for you to engage with this content further. And Wendy will also be putting a few links in the chat for you to make that easier. But I do want to go to a question that came in at the very beginning of our conversation, and I'm not quite sure how to say this person's name, so I will not say the name, but I'm going to read out the question. So the question is, do you consider working from home a factor to those who opted for other jobs where they can work from home more than on site? So this question came in, Yetta, when you were speaking about the challenges that we're seeing in our organizations in 2023. So is this idea that people want to work from home a big factor, and why or why not?
Yeah, that was absolutely around the time I was talking about the McKinsey and the workplace study and the great resignation and then the great retention. One of the things that we're seeing around talent acquisition is around how benefits are defined today differently, right? It's not all about what your pay is. It's not the medical, not necessarily retirement. What's that total benefit packet looks like to that individual. Remote work is important to a lot of people. Learned during COVID, they liked having that ability to work from home and be able to be more connected with their family, their partner while they were at home, and even the fur babies, right? We saw a population of a lot of fur babies being adopted during that time. So to me, remote work has some factor, not necessarily the key factor in what's happening there, because there is a certain trend in some organizations where hybrid work is staying there, where you will have an option to come into the office a certain number of days out of the week, and then you can work remote. So we're seeing some flexibility in companies being able to offer that hybrid. There are a set of people who want to go into the office. God bless them. I live in Dallas. That 30-mile trek in and into traffic is not something that I aspire to do. But I've worked remotely because of the jobs I've had at Xerox for more than 15 years. But that hybrid function is definitely going to be a piece of it. So remote is some of it, but the overall change that's occurring It's how the individual, that employee, values benefit. And that difference from, and that's a hard one to wrap your head around, because that is a case by case individual on what they look at, what does benefit means to them. So that's the piece that's really addressing the resignation. Could be tied to just well-being. It could be a part of their mental health. It could be, I'd rather go get a lower paying job working less hours. Goodness knows what all that can entail. Okay.
Heather, do you have anything to add on that topic?
No, I think that you did a great job. I mean, the thing is that some of this thing, when you think about remote work generally, or just workplace, if we just make assumptions about what our team members want in aggregate, we're going to fail every day. We're going to fail every day. You have to be an organization, or be a part of an organization, or part of a team, or be an individual who's willing to listen, to bring insights back to your manager. If you're not a manager, if you're a manager, to bring that back to senior leadership, right? Wherever you're at in your own role, owning that. But I think we have to find out what people want at work. We can't use a cookie cutter approach. We can't just look at the news and say, this is what we're going to do now. We have to say, what do our people want? And once we discover what that is, we can look at the majority, because not everybody's going to want the same thing, even inside the organization. We know that. But can we solve for the majority? It's some way, shape, or form inside there. Can we look for solutions there? So thanks, though. Yeah, that was amazing.
So I want to go back to the barrier to active listening that we talked about, multitasking. I don't know why that didn't come out for me. Multitasking. And I'm wondering, do either of you have any tips or ways that you have worked on this? So, if we have leaders listening today who really struggle with that, maybe you're on a meeting on Zoom and you find yourself checking email and you're not attending to your team, or, maybe with your family at home. I know my daughter is learning to drive, and sometimes I get very distracted by my phone when she's driving. So I've taken to putting my phone in the glove compartment and shutting it, so that I'm only just giving my attention to her. So I'm curious if the two of you have any tips or tricks to eliminate the multitasking and really to focus on the person who's right in front of you.
Yeah. I'll let you go.
I'll start with that one, Heather. When you said focus, it's one of the things I use, one of the Microsoft tools for your Outlook calendar to create that focus time, right? For me, I have to manage that and plan it accordingly. Focusing on my personal email, I do that in the morning and at the end of day. I can't look at my personal email throughout the day. Yeah, my handset may be handy, but my phone is turned face down. Okay. And it's like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to be distracted about all the group meetings I'm a part of, all the text messaging. So that helps me push technology to the side. Even when I am in meetings, I believe this is something Heather said earlier in our conversation, I'm engaged. I want to be present to make sure I understand and make sure I know what I'm doing. And especially if there's something that I know I need to respond to, I normally tell the individuals in the meeting, please just give me a moment. I want to respond to this email, or if something comes up that's urgent, I will acknowledge this has caught my attention. Allow me to focus on this, or I apologize to them to say I need to step aside. To me, I think about it the same way when I was in in-person meetings, showing up in the office. When something happened, had to excuse yourself, or you had to let whatever that distraction know that you would have to detain it and get to it later. You have to ensure that you're doing it. And I'm learning, much to what you said, Becky, is driving on the road. I like to be able to just listen to the music and not be distracted by calls coming in or text message coming in, even though I can see them displayed on the panel of my car. I'd like to practice, and I'm being prepared for this when I'm going to see Bruno Mars next weekend in Vegas. And I have been told, Bruno says, I want you present in my concert. After the price we pay for those tickets, I can understand why. And your phone is put in a bag and locked until the end of the concert. That's what we need to do. We need to take those distractions, put them in a bag and lock them until you are done being present in the moment. And then you allow time for it to be present in that. Then go see your TikTok videos, go respond to your emails and text message. But being present in the moment is how I'm looking to manage it.
Perfect. Yes. We're talking about presence is so key. It is that gift that present is a present to those who are in front of you. I love it so much. There's two things that I think about. One is setting our intention. Setting our intention to be present is a big one, because we can make tons of excuses why it's super hard. And it is super hard, by the way, in our world of multitasking and all the things ringing and buzzing and all those. But if we don't set our intention right off the bat, and it is a mind game, it is mental, that says the second thing I'm thinking, the person that is in front of me right now needs me right now in this moment. They are the most important person in my life. And I'm going to give you an example of this really quickly. Many years ago, I worked at Mary Kay Cosmetics, and Mary Kay believed in this idea of presence. And she had this, she was known for, I never got to meet her, but she was known for, if someone was right in front of you, right in front of her, she could have 1,000 other people lining up to wait to talk to her. And she would be locked in, and her eyes would not at all go, because we know we do that. We're like, and we're just all looking around because we see people waiting for us or whatever. And it's like, nope, she would not look. She would not disengage. She locked in. But her intention was to make sure the person in front of her felt important in her presence. And so if we set our intention and think of the word importance, I think that would help us a lot.
That is
Absolutely.
So amazing.
And if I can, Becky, I want to say that because, Mary Kay from Dallas, Texas, and that's one of the things they talk about, how she would make you feel like you were the most important person, although there were 1,000 in the room. So that 30-second time you had with her, you felt like you were the most important person in the world. So that was a gift and a talent she had, but making sure that she was present in the moment.
I try to emulate that. I'm not perfect at it. I write books about it, speak about it, and I can tell you, I probably get like a 75% on this. So you're right. This is what it's about. I want to help me and you in the process.
Well, as we come to the end of this amazing hour, we want to remind you of a couple of ways to stay connected to this book. As I mentioned earlier, we do have 2 more events in this special series. We have February 23rd. We have March 28th, and that's with Stephen M.R. Covey. And we'd like to encourage you to pre-order your copy of The Art of Active Listening today. You can pre-order one, or if you're able to connect with your organization and order the book in bulk from Porchlight Books, this would be the best book of the new season that I'm talking about in this hour that you want to order in bulk. To bring this art of helping people feel heard, valued, and understood at work. And again, if you're curious about finding out how to be a part of Heather's VIP book launch team, you can find out about that as well. So as we wrap up the hour, I want to just kick it back to Heather to send us out with some parting inspiration so that we can stay focused on what matters most about this topic today.
Eunice, I love that you said that we have so much to learn about ourselves and about others. And we can only do that when we commit to leaning in, removing the distractions, being present, making sure that the whole person is taken in, the things they say, the things they don't say, the things that are said in our culture and our teams and those that aren't said, and how aware we are. Do we pause enough to pay attention? Asking ourselves this question, how well do we do and how do we score? I just told you I'm 75%. I didn't tell you I was 100. And so thinking about for yourself, what ways can you improve? I want to say this though, 2 things. One is this is not a journey of perfection. It's a journey of continuous improvement. It's just a little bit better every day. So don't hit yourself over the head about what you did earlier this morning or yesterday. Just commit to going forward to being the person that says, I want people in my presence to feel heard, valued, and understood. I have the power to do that. I don't have to blame on anybody else. It's within my control and with my power to make it happen. And so let's just all commit to doing that.